I haven't been able to stop thinking about Nosferatu since I've seen it. I can't wait to watch it again. I was ready to succumb to the darkness all over again as soon as it was over. Nosferatu is a remake, a reimagining of the 1922 iconic German silent film, which was in turn an unauthorized and unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's a dark, gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and an ancient vampire infatuated with her, causing all kinds of horror and chaos as he pursues his goal. Where do I even start? Because this movie was everything I hoped it would be and so much more. I was actually so excited for Nosferatu. I was ready to be a little bit disappointed because there was no way it was going to live up to my expectations. But it didn't just live up to them, it exceeded them. I loved every frame of this film, so let's start there. It looks stunning. It is simply one of the most beautiful movies of the year, if not the most beautiful. Eggers always makes gorgeous looking films, but this is on another level. The sense of place he's able to create, the atmosphere, the tone, the mood, it's out of this world. It feels like you're stepping into someone's dream, or rather an exquisite nightmare, or an eerie old photograph. It just transports you. The sets, the costumes, cinematography, sound, framing, staging, the use of color, it's all perfect and it all works to tell the story. I loved the way the visuals were used to emphasize the state of mind of the characters, their emotions and personalities. The lighting, it's a whole separate conversation because the way light and shadows are used here is so deliberate. You see the castle at nighttime with its empty hallways and the way lighting, or lack thereof, interacts with the structure, and it is breathtaking. There are some stunning silhouette lighting shots that I am just obsessed with, like that shot you see in the trailer with the falling snow and the carriage. It was so beautiful, I could have cried. Basically what I'm saying is that every shot of Nosferatu can be framed as a work of art, and I feel like this is such an overused phrase, but it truly applies here. There were so many moments when I wished I could pause the movie and just admire what I was seeing on screen. I will say things do look a little too dark in some scenes, which looks great in the theater, but I do wonder what this will look like on TVs at home. But then again, the darkness of it all is kind of the point, and what you don't see is there by design, making you wonder what the shapes behind the shadows mean, just like the desaturated ashy color palette that occasionally looks as close to black and white as you can get, makes you feel the cold emanating from the screen. When it comes to Count Orlok himself, I loved the choice to keep him in the shadows most of the time, not letting the audience see him fully for a while. He's concealed by the shadows, his face is partially obscured. You see parts of him, his eyes, his fingers, his silhouette, but mostly he is shrouded in mystery, moving through space in an unsettling way because from time to time he's just not where you expect him to be, and it doesn't feel like basic teleporting or anything. It's very effective. Now, I'm going to say something and you're going to think I'm just being dramatic, but I swear I did not realize that this was Bill Skarsgård until the third act of the film. I know this sounds crazy, especially because I knew he was in the movie, but I guess I forgot? I don't know what happened. I cannot explain this. I don't know what kind of sorcery this was. Nosferatu had me under some kind of spell. He doesn't look like himself. He doesn't act like himself. He doesn't sound like himself. His voice, by the way, I don't know what they did, but he sounds so creepy, but also really epic. It's amazing. His look kind of feels a little inspired by the portrait of Vlad the Impaler, but a really fucked up version of that. He looks great and very different from what we've seen before with Nosferatu and Dracula interpretations, which I loved. But yes, Bill Skarsgård is fantastic. He is truly unrecognizable. He completely transforms, and I still cannot believe I didn't realize it was him for most of the movie. Lily Rose Depp. deserves an Oscar. This is an insane performance. She is unbelievably good here. So ethereal and so doomed, you just can't take your eyes off her. She actually reminded me a bit of Isabella Gianni from Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire. Her performance has this constant life or death desperation to it. There's an urgency and deep honesty behind everything she's doing, but also a darkness she wants to keep hidden and just can't. The writing provides Ellen, her character, with some excellent inner conflict, and you can tell she's constantly trying to suppress it from bubbling to the surface. She also gets very intense here, to the point of some scenes making me a bit worried about her as a person. Loved her in this role. She's fantastic, and she has amazing chemistry with the rest of the cast. Speaking of the rest of the cast, there really isn't a weak link here. Nicholas Hoult is very well suited for his role as Ellen's husband, Thomas, whose work assignment gets him in way over his head. Emma Corrin and Aaron Taylor-Johnson are excellent as well, with Taylor-Johnson yet again reminding us how underused he is in Hollywood as an actor and how much more we need to see him on screen. Willem Dafoe actually doesn't show up for a while, but when he does, he kind of takes over the scenes that he's in. All of them work so well together and feel very cohesive as a cast. Their relationships feel real, whether they love, hate, or are frustrated with each other. Each character feels like there's a history there behind the story that we're seeing. Something else I loved about Nosferatu is how seriously Eggers took this story, showing it as the beautiful, dark, gothic fairy tale that it is. No tongue-in-cheek storytelling in sight, no winking at the audience or being ashamed of its own tropes, just full-on classic gothic horror, and I am so grateful for that. And here's the thing, Nosferatu is very respectful of the films that came before it, the classics that inspired it, but even though it's retelling a familiar story, it doesn't feel derivative, and it finds its own way to tell it. I was so consumed by the narrative, I actually felt like it could end up going in its own direction. I'm not confirming or denying anything, no spoilers, but as far as my experience goes, I found myself wondering where the film will go next. Will they all die? Will they all live? Will it be tragic? Will there be hope? This film convinced me it's telling its own story, and most of the time when it comes to remakes and retellings, it's hard to maintain that tension of what comes next because you already know what happens. And as far as it being a horror film, I would say it's effective in a way classic horror is effective, which I loved because this movie is so seductively ominous. Robert Eggers has never been one to rely on cheap scare tactics in his movies, so of course Nosferatu is all about the atmosphere, building tension, and the growing sense of unease. It's a horror film filled with dark dreams and visions, taking a turn towards madness and maybe even possession, as it explores sexuality, repression, obsession, fear, grief, and mortality. I personally found a lot of the imagery deeply unsettling, and the movie definitely got under my skin. It's been a while since a horror film was able to conjure up this kind of feeling of impending doom for the characters, an evil that is bigger than anything they could possibly imagine. So do I have anything negative to say about this movie? I really don't. Emma Corrin's wigs looked a little off to me, but that's literally the only thing, and who cares? I loved Nosferatu. I loved this movie from its intense and ominous opening sequence to the very last shot. And wow, what a final shot does this film have. Simply unforgettable. I loved how dark, seductive, haunting, and eerie everything was. I loved the score. Every location is absolutely gorgeous, whether it's Count Orlok's mysterious castle or the village in the Carpathian Mountains mountains with all of its colorful characters, or the German town our main group of characters are from. The costumes, the cast, the cinematography, the lighting, everything about this movie feels right, feels cohesive. Everything works together to create this stunning Gothic film. Nosferatu should be nominated in almost every single category when it comes to awards, but the Academy hates horror, so it's never going to happen. But it should be. The crafts, the performances, especially Lily Rose Depp, directing, best picture, it's easily one of the best films of the year, no question about it. Watching this movie, I found myself unsettled, disturbed, and rattled multiple times, but also in complete awe of what I was seeing. A movie like this is just such a rare treat. I knew this was going to be a favorite before I even got halfway through the film. It's that good. And sometimes you just know. And I love a good vampire movie. I've seen a lot of them. I kind of thought I've seen it all when it comes to different takes on telling this type of story. So trust me when I say that Nosferatu is one of the best vampire movies ever made.